Greetings, everyone. Yes, the wait is at long last over. It is Halloween month here on the Zarin Isaac channel. So, as you know, Halloween month is always a crazy fun time here, so we got a lot ahead of us, so let's get right into it. So, last year I started doing reviews of the Universal Monsters movies and some of the other spin-offs of the classic monsters and such. And this year I'm planning to do much the same thing, just kind of pick up right where we left off. So, to jump back in, I thought we would start with a classic entry in the pantheon of Universal horror titles. Not one of the Universal monsters, but starring Boris Karloff and directed by the man who brought us Frankenstein, The Bride of Frankenstein, and The Invisible Man, Mr. James Whale. We have The Old Dark House. Yeah, I hadn't even heard of this movie until I caught wind of the remastering coming out on Blu-ray last year, and I snapped it up as soon as I heard about it because I thought it sounded fantastic. So I've got quite a lot to say about it, so let's get right to it today on the Multimedia Chronicles. Back. So, 1932's The Old Dark House was the second of four Universal horror films that would be directed by James Whale. The first, of course, being 1931's Frankenstein, the third of which being 1933's The Invisible Man, and the fourth of which being 1935's The Bride of Frankenstein. So, while not considered part of the Universal Monsters line, it is certainly considered part of the Universal horror line. So before we begin, I should mention this Blu-ray, for the most part, is awesome. This is a brand new restoration that was just done last year, a 4K restoration, and it looks absolutely pristine. I've seen some of the older prints that are floating around out there, and they don't look anywhere near as good as this. It's crisp and clean and deep dark blacks and film grain and just absolutely beautiful. The one complaint I have about this Blu-ray, this Cohen Films release, is at the beginning of the film, originally, there was actually a producer's note. Here's a screenshot of it. Now, the UK Blu-ray release does include that little producer's note, but I don't know why, but it was omitted from this version for some reason, which is kind of strange to me because I think it acts as a nice little snapshot of how Boris Karloff's star was very much on the rise at the time. Speaking of which, this is actually his first properly credited starring role. He actually gets credit right at the beginning of the movie. In Frankenstein, he only got credit at the end because I guess they wanted to keep the identity of the actor playing the monster a secret. But that movie was such a massive hit, suddenly his name had marquee value. So I guess the producers were concerned that his wonderful performance as Morgan, the hulking, misshapen manservant, was sufficiently different from his performance as the Frankenstein monster that people may be confused as to whether or not this was the same person. Hence the little line about it being a tribute to his versatility. Also, Morgan, much like the Frankenstein monster the previous year, is a mute character. He just kind of grunts and groans. But of course, anyone who saw The Mummy the same year would have known that Boris Karloff, in fact, has a very lovely speaking voice. So The Old Dark House is based on a novel by J.B. Priestley entitled Benighted. Sadly, I don't have a copy of the book as of yet. I'd really like to pick it up. But I understand that this is actually quite a faithful adaptation. It's a fairly short book. It's maybe about 150 or so pages. And apparently the movie sticks quite closely to the story of the novel. I went into this movie fairly cold. My curiosity was piqued just because it's an early Boris Karloff movie, also because it was the same director who did those other three movies that I love so much. And yeah, so I didn't know what to expect. If it was going to be like a haunted house movie or some kind of thriller or a film noir thing, I had no idea. So the story follows three travelers, two men and a woman, who are traveling through the Wales countryside in the middle of a raging thunderstorm. There's an avalanche. It washes out the road. They can't get out. They got to wait out the storm. So they happen across this old, dark house. So the family that owns the house is the Fem family. That's Fem with two M's. And reluctantly agrees to let them spend the night. And they're very hospitable, very pleasant. And they have dinner with them. They're all sitting around the big table. They've got a big roast beef dinner and potatoes and everything. They're having very pleasant conversation. And then another couple shows up. Two more people, one of which is Charles Laughton, by the way, very famous actor and director of Night of the Hunter, great suspense thriller. So they join in and they get all into the conversation and such. And the thing is, the initial three were very pleasant and hospitable and more or less welcomed by the family. And they're all getting along fairly well. This other couple, Charles Laughton, is sort of this big, blustery, slightly rude guy. One part that really cracked me up was earlier in their conversation over dinner, Mr. Fem, played by the wonderful Ernest Thesiger, by the way, who, if you're a fan of Bride of Frankenstein, you'll remember him as Dr. Praetorius. Yeah, he's the head of the household, essentially. Wonderful actor. Love his sort of slightly sly, tongue-in-cheek delivery of his lines and his performance. Is just an absolute joy to watch. So anyway, they're all sitting around having dinner and talking, and very politely, he's like, "Oh, have a potato. Have a potato." You know, it's like just throughout the course of the conversation, just keeps offering everybody potatoes. So when Charles Laughton shows up, he's just like, blah, 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 blah. It's like being very blustery and so forth. It's like, "Oh, roast beef, you know, wonderful, blah, blah." And then he just goes off telling some story that's making everyone slightly uncomfortable. And Mr. Fem just holds the plate over to him and says, "Have a potato." Like, up until that point, it was very pleasant, like, "Oh, have a potato." But this was just like, without actually saying it, the implication was, shut your noise hole with a potato, you know. It's just wonderful. And the whole movie was filled with little moments like that. I was really quite surprised by how funny it actually is, but not funny like, you know, screwball comedy funny. No, it was funny through the cleverness and the wittiness of the dialogue and the interactions of the characters and such. And it just made it really fun to watch. I mean, just even when they're just all sitting around having a conversation after dinner by the fireplace, sort of swapping stories and whatnot, you can't help but be riveted. I mean, these are just really interesting characters played by actors at the absolute height of their game. And it's an absolute joy just to watch the interaction between these characters and listen to the incredibly snappy dialogue. So as the evening progresses, it becomes quite obvious that something is slightly askew here. You can't quite put your finger on it, but you know something ain't quite right about this family and the house and the situation there. So at one point, the storm knocks out the lights, and the sister of the head of the household, Mr. Fem, suggests that he go and gets the lamp from upstairs. And she makes a really big deal about where the lamp is located. It's like, "Oh, you know where the lamp is. It's on that table by that door. And you know what's behind that door." And so there's like all of this sort of hubbub made about where the lamp is located. It's like, what is going on? And about what's upstairs and so forth. So one of the men goes off with Mr. Fem to get the lamp, and Mr. Fem doesn't want to go upstairs. He refuses, like, no, go and get the lamp. It's fine. It's like, I thought you said it was really heavy. It's, oh, no, it's quite light. And it's like, you realize, because they made a big deal about how heavy the lamp was before. It's like, oh, I can't get it. It's too heavy. But it's like, no, it's actually quite light. And it's like, Like, he doesn't call him out on it, but you know, like, he's kind of like, well, what's up here? So he goes up and he gets the lamp and sees that it's on a little table, and on the table is a plate with like the remains of some food that have been eaten, and the door to the room next to the table is padlocked shut. So the natural conclusion is somebody's locked in there. And there's another door on another flight of stairs that is also locked. So what is the deal with these two locked doors? I don't want to say too much, because if, like me, you haven't seen this, you really want to go in cold. Because as the whole mystery unfolds, it's just such a ride. Okay, so I need to talk about a couple of specific things that were, to me, big moments in the movie, but it would necessitate going into spoiler territory. So if you haven't seen the movie yet and you don't want to have sort of the big mysteries towards the end spoiled, then you probably want to stop here. Then come back and watch the rest after you've seen the movie. If you have seen the movie and you just want to get my thoughts, or you don't care about spoilers, then by all means proceed. So a few interesting things. Boris Karloff, first off, is amazing in this. I mean, the man, I think, was a chameleon. I mean, he could play just about any type of character you could imagine. But, of course, because of his size and his imposing features, he often got cast as the heavy or the monster or the killer or whatever. And that's fine, because, I mean, he would just throw himself into those roles, too, and do the best. And as Morgan, the manservant, he is freaking scary as hell. Yeah, because as they're having dinner, Morgan goes off into the back room and starts getting drunk. Like, he just starts drinking and drinking and drinking. At one point, one of the girls passes by the window to his room, and he, like, smashes his fist through the window and tries to grab at her, but she scoots away. And, yeah, he's scary. At one point, two of the characters get access to the first of the locked doors. Not the one on the upper level, but the middle one. And behind that locked door is Sir Roderick Fem, who is the eldest living family member, and he's basically on his deathbed and bedridden and such. And he's very gracious to them. He doesn't mind that they've come in, and he welcomes them in, and they chat and such. Interesting casting choice here, by the way. Sir Roderick is apparently just very old, like just a really, really old guy. But they cast a really, really old woman to play the part of Sir Roderick, which I thought was really interesting. And she does a great job, too. She really, really nails it. So as they're talking to Sir Roderick, he tells them about what the big secret of the family is. And namely, there's another brother named Saul who is locked upstairs because he's crazy and he wants to burn the house to the ground. He's a pyromaniac, basically. So they keep him locked up to protect the house and to protect the family and to protect anybody who happens by. And Morgan is kept around essentially to deal with Saul should he happen to escape. Here's the problem, though. Morgan, at this stage in the story, is raging drunk and doesn't care about protecting anybody and gets it in his head that he's going to let Saul out. And I have to say, from a directorial standpoint, the way that Saul is introduced is so tense and so perfect. So they come out, and sure enough, Morgan has gone upstairs, and he's let Saul out, and he slowly comes down the stairs. And you don't see Saul come out right away. You just see his hand on the railing of the staircase. Yeah, out of sight around the corner. You just see his hand on the railing. And it just stays there for, like, I swear, it feels like 10 minutes. While they're dealing with Morgan and they're dealing with everybody else and everybody's freaking out. It's like, oh my God, you let Saul out, blah, blah, blah. And all this chaos breaks out. So, they're off to trying to subdue Morgan and everything. And there's basically what ends up happening is one of the men is left alone and Saul slowly comes down the stairs and they start to have a pleasant conversation. So at this point, all we have is Sir Roderick's word to go on as far as who and what Saul is and what he's all about. So this guy is talking to him, and he's like, well, okay, well, maybe it's okay. So Pendrell, the man who was left to deal with Saul, is just having a pleasant conversation with him. And meanwhile, he's locked the two women in a cupboard off to the side of the dining room to try to keep them safe from Morgan's raging and from whatever Saul has in mind. And he's trying to hide the fact that they're in there. He doesn't want them to be hurt. So he's basically just kind of playing along and feeling out where Saul is coming from. And I gotta tell you, like, this conversation that they have was like some of the most riveting dialogue I've heard in years. Like, just seeing thanks in no small part to the performance of the two actors and just the intensity of, like, Pendrell trying to figure out where Saul's coming from. Saul trying to act sane and trying to convince Pendrell that he's sane. And meanwhile, Pendrell kind of sniffing him out and realizing, no, this guy is freaking nuts. And if I don't play my cards right, he's going to kill me. So he's playing it very careful and very cautious and choosing his words very carefully. And it's just such an amazing scene between these two actors. And of course, what ends up happening is, sure enough, Saul goes to set the place on fire. Pendrell chases after him. Morgan shows up. There's a big fight. They get knocked off the railing. Saul gets killed. Pendrell gets knocked out. All hell breaks loose, essentially. Now, in the original book, Pendrell actually died at that point. That's the one major change from the book, apparently. In the movie, he doesn't die. He's just knocked unconscious and he's injured. But over the course of the movie, he's also fallen madly, instantly in love with the companion of Charles Laughton's character, who was basically a dancing girl. And they just kind of instantly fell for each other. It's a very sweet, kind of innocent, love at first sight thing, but you can't help but be charmed by these two. They're just so adorable. So I guess the powers that be wanted to give Pendrell and the dancing girl a happy ending, unlike what happens in the book. But, oh, man, what a great movie. Like, this was such a treat. Like I said, I had no idea what to expect, and what I got was even better than what I would have thought. So, yeah, The Old Dark House. I cannot recommend this highly enough. Add it to your Halloween viewings. You will not be disappointed. And there you have it. Definitely a fantastic entry in the Universal Horror universe. Yeah. I can't recommend this highly enough. If you've never seen it, check it out. It's great. The remastering on this is beautiful. Yeah, it's definitely worth a look-see, and of having a very well-deserved place in your library. Alrighty, that is it from me to you for now, so until next time, thanks for watching, big thanks to my Patreon sponsors, and sayonara. So I have to say, I was very pleasantly surprised. It was fucking great.